Good morning and welcome to our new segment on Space Cyber. It's only 10 days now, until the second Australian Space Cyber Forum in Adelaide. It's been a busy month, with scientific analysis of the Mother's Day G5 magnetic storm that produced stunning aurorae around the world. Emergency Management Australia ran a 2-day workshop, Exercise Aurora, to determine how prepared government and industry are for a Carrington event. I am sure Peter will be across all this. What is a Carrington event? What can you tell our
Well, thanks, Naomi. Yes, the Carrington event, very famous event, happened back in 1859. Richard Carrington, an astronomer who spent a lot of time sketching solar sunspots on the disk of the solar surface through astronomical observations at the time. It was the 1st of September 1859. He observed a bright flash that went for about 5 minutes. And this has been analyzed by scientists for over 100 years across the century since. And to determine what the makeup of this event was, what actually happened. And it was very interesting last weekend. I had the great opportunity to sit down for 4 hours and watch an incredible video by Dr. Tamitha Skov, who's one of the world leading experts in solar dynamics. She has a series of videos that takes you through all the different histories of solar activity over the last, I think it was 13 solar cycles. A solar cycle lasts for 11 years, and the various magnetic fields on the sun behave in certain ways, and it creates sunspots or lack of sunspots depending on where it is in the cycle. It travels over many years. So throughout the period of time up until around the about 2 cycles ago, we had an increasing solar maxima that Dr. Tamitha explains, and in her videos, absolutely brilliant stuff. And then we saw a declining solar minima over the last couple of cycles, and astronomers talked about um, and not being bored with what was going on in the sun, but they were just kind of like, oh, there's nothing much going on. So solar cycle 24 was one of the lowest number of sunspot activities we'd ever seen, and that's an 11-year cycle. So over 11 years, we saw very few, very quiet sun, and that's been very interesting to observe. And Dr. Tamitha was talking about uh, how a lot of the knowledge of the industry and the scientists that operate in this space had sort of um, disappeared almost, because a lot of them had retired in the 20 years since we really had 20, 30 years since we had some really interesting stuff to talk about. It's all interesting, of course, but even when solar minimum, we need to find out how that occurs and why it occurs, all those kind of things. So it's very, very interesting. So on May the 11th, we saw a G5 magnetic storm, as you said, and that was very, very interesting event. So it kind of didn't necessarily catch us by surprise. We could see the sun increasing in activity levels, and we could see that the pace of solar activity was picking up. So large sunspot group called AR3664 came around the sun and was just gradually working its way around the sun and moving away from us when it let off a number of X-class solar flares, which created the first G5 magnetic storm in over 20 years, since about 2003. So this was an absolutely spectacular event, and Dr. Tamitha's studies show that over the centuries, or the last 13 solar cycles, she went through all the different types of solar magnetic storms that were very similar to this original Carrington event. Now, the Carrington event in 1859 was very significant because it had a lot of physical effects on the surface of the Earth. Namely, electrical grids went nuts, the telegraph wires went nuts, there was railway lines that had strange currents and sparks and electromagnetic activity generating around. And over the course of the last 100 years, the importance of studying these events is quite significant because we now live in an age where we're very technologically dependent on all our telecommunication systems, our GPS, all these kind of things. So, a lot of the conspiracy theorists and doomsday preppers on the internet would tell you, oh, the world's going to end when we get one of these Carrington events. Well, we've had something that's not quite a Carrington level event, but it was lacking one particular feature in that the coronal mass ejection was not traveling as fast as what we'd typically seen in some of the ones that Dr. Tamitha had covered during her videos. So that was absolutely fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And I won't steal all the thunder from her great video. You can look at it in the article that we posted today in Encapsulated by QR5, which is an article entitled Whether the Weather is Fine in Space. So bit of a pun there with the weathers. So that's all very interesting. So there's a great article come out today on Encapsulated by QR5, and you can read all the details there. It's a follow-up article from one we wrote 2 weeks ago, quoting the famous words of John Fitzgerald Kennedy at Rice University in 1962, where he talked about we choose to go to the moon not because it's easy, because it's hard, and the conquest of space is worthy of all our citizens. So he did point out a particular feature there, which is space can be dangerous to us all. So we're looking this week in this article at what are the dangers of space weather, and we pick up on some of Dr. Tamitha Scove's work and incorporate that in there with some wonderful real writing, not AI generated, real natural voice, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it all. So the reason for that and linking these two articles together is because coming up here on the screen, you'll see in 2 weeks' time, we have coming up the Australian Space Cyber Forum, which will be on in 2 weeks' time in Adelaide, or just only 10 days now, actually, on the 26th of June. So that's going to be a huge event where all the leaderships of the space community come together to talk about all things to do with space cyber, space defense, defense of space cyber, and using all the technology in space to defend us from cyber attacks and potentially damage from space weather against our own infrastructure and things like that. So following hot on the heels of this Mother's Day event, which was G5 magnetic storm, we found the Australian, the National Emergency Management Association held just 2 weeks later. While all this was all fresh in their mind, I'm sure they probably had it already organised beforehand. Having a couple hundred people coming together in Adelaide, obviously that takes some time to plan, so it wasn't just spur of the moment, I'm sure. But this event where they actually walked through what a Carrington-like event, how it would be managed by Emergency Services Australia, the National Emergency Management, and all the space weather, geoscience, all the government agencies, how they will work together with industry to make sure that we're prepared and ready for that event should it take place. So I know the Minister for Cybersecurity, Claire O'Neill, who looks after critical infrastructure, is always very keen and pushing on all critical infrastructure owners that they should be prepared and well drilled and well rehearsed with their incident response plans, and the tabletop exercises and experiences are very good ways of making sure you're battle ready, and they do war game that with the critical infrastructure around the country. So this one was Home Affairs were involved with the Weather Bureau and Geoscience Australia, but it was very much an event where it was led by the Emergency Management Australia through a protocol that they particularly follow for all natural disasters that they are involved in. So just going to flick back here to the Australian Space Cyber Forum. So you can see that there, June the 26th in Adelaide. A lot of the leadership in space and events that come out of the space defense industry happen in Adelaide. There's a big motto down there, of course, find your space in Adelaide. And of course, from the South Australian government right up to the federal government, a lot of industry are involved there. Got Lot 14 there now building a space cyber precinct. You've got Cyber Ops, you've got Aurora who are sponsoring this event. It's going to be absolutely huge, so I will be there. And it's going to be a great day on the 26th of June in Adelaide. So thanks for joining us today. It's been really a great honour to have you with us and talking about space weather. So we'll try and increase the cadence of our coverage of space cyber. We'll be doing some live crosses on the 26th and hopefully talking to some people on the ground. So stay tuned for that, and over and out this morning. Thanks for joining us.